I mean, I was unfaithful on multiple times to my wife, right? It's not healed. And we think if we don't talk about it, then it gets healed, and that's not the case either. It's kind of like a kid who puts a blindfold over their eyes and they think nobody can see them because they can't see. It's like, because I had seen the colossal damage that it had done, right. For not just that with my wife, but as I look back at my life, it's like, man, this had some collateral damage, man. Shame is you're at the 1 yard line and you try to score and you're stopped every single time. That's demoralizing. Lives, I want to use my story to help a guy not do what I did. That's why I say all the time, I don't know what to tell you what to do, but I can tell you what not to do. And that's because of just the darkness that I've had to walk through. So at the end of the day, man, I want to go home and play with my grandkid, Accountability is giving someone permission to save me from myself.
Yeah. JT McCraw is passionate about building both men and mansions. As a home builder for over 30 years, JT understands the importance of laying solid foundations, whether in construction homes or in building a life of greatness. His passion is fueled by his personal story of reconstructing his own life and sharing the lessons learned during these dark days of crisis. He has traveled the world helping men find their way to greatness. JT is also the co-host of the Great Men podcast and is a John Maxwell certified life coach. JT is married to the beautiful Shelly for over 33 years, and they have 5 children and 1 grandson. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. JT McCraw.
What's up, my brother? Good to see you, man. Good to see you, man. Yeah. When'd you get out of jail?
Last week. My mom sit on the
Welcome to another episode of My Manhood Matters, Real Men, Real Times, Real Journeys. I have the pleasure of having one of my favorite brothers here, Mr. JT McCraw. He is in the building today. He's not only just a husband, a father, but he's an educator. He's a world-renowned speaker. He is most sought of, and he has a great podcast that we'll talk about a little later. Welcome to the show, JT McCraw.
Man, who are you talking about?
I'm talking about you, man.
Okay. It's like, man, I want to meet this brother right here.
JT, how long you been working with men's ministry?
Man, informally, it probably started in 2006 when I was asked to mentor my first guy.
Wow.
And one of the pastors at the church that I went to asked me if I would meet with him. He kind of knew my story,
right?
Which I'm sure we'll get into. But
right.
And said, man, this dude's dealing with some stuff. Can you help him? And that's really when it started. And by the way, I'm still friends with that guy today, and he stayed married. So.
Job well done.
So I'm 1,000 because I haven't talked to another guy since because I'm batting 1,000. So no, I'm just kidding. But really 2006, and then formally,
right.
I became a men's pastor in 2012.
Did you ever think you'd be doing this?
No. I always knew I'm 3rd generation builder.
Right.
Just in my blood, you know. So always knew I was going to be a builder. Never thought about being in ministry. In fact, my mother was the secretary of our church growing up. And so, as a kid, you kind of see things behind the scenes and, which nothing really bad went on at our church, thankfully.
Right.
Had a great pastor.
Right.
But, just the stresses and just everything that a pastor or church staff goes through. And I was like, yeah, I ain't never doing that for sure. Not doing that. So then I ended up doing it for a season. So
wow. So JT, when you look at masculinity today,
oh man,
it's changed over 20 years.
Yeah.
What do you see now?
Emptiness.
Okay. Still.
Yeah. In fact, I think it's probably gotten worse in some regards.
How so?
I say this quite often. There's a fatherlessness, obviously, I think is the number one indicator.
Mm-hmm.
And that's gotten worse.
Okay.
And that's in the Black community. That's in the white community. That's in
There's
whatever
no respect
community.
of person.
It is
for a man.
Zero respecter. And it all has the same effect.
Mm.
And I do think that is one of the things that I don't think that we've taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're seeing the effects of it right now.
Wow.
So that answer probably hasn't changed since I started, really, honestly.
Wow. And so when you have a sense of emptiness, then it leads to identity issues.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, because, a father gives weight. You remember those, we're old enough to know this. Sorry about the 25-year-olds, not going to know what I'm talking about.
Right.
But we used to have this toy, this Weeble Wobble. Remember the Weeble
Right.
Wobble?
Yeah.
And basically it was a plastic toy that had weight at the bottom, and you could hit it and it bounced back
up.
up. That's what a father does for a son. He gives him the weight that he's not tossed to and fro with every wind and doctrine that comes around. And so when you don't have that, obviously you're susceptible to a lot of things that you grab onto. It's like the shiniest thing at the moment, that's where a kid goes to. So, and without the father there, man, it's generational stuff that you're talking about.
Gotcha. But but the blessed thing about it though, JT, you can say is at least we're talking about it more now.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more information out there than there ever has been. Thank God. It's still the fact that you have to read the book, you have to listen to the podcast, and you have to take action. One of the worst days, I'm a home builder, it's my business. One of the worst days on the planet for me is nobody shows up. Just nobody on site, just nothing getting done, no work getting done.
No concrete being laid.
No nothing, no framing, no nothing. Well, in a man's life, that should be your worst day when you don't work on yourself. We have to,
do you think we don't work on ourselves based upon we're trying to be all things to all people? I'm a husband, father, business owner, counselor, pastor, community leader, and we run on empty?
Yeah, I think all of those are identities that we put a lot of work into.
Okay.
And how I would describe that is that, no matter what you build, there's 3 phases to everything that you build. There's the foundation, there's the framing, and there's a covering. In our business, it's the foundation, it's the framing, and the roof we call covering.
Right.
But when a man when he's not foundationally built correct, he's gonna build a life. He's gonna add all the titles that you just said, and if the foundation is laid improperly, it will collapse. It will crush it. So that's why I'm on this kick now with men, going back to the foundations that were laid in your life. You did not particularly lay them. Your mom laid them. Your dad laid them. A pastor laid them. A coach laid them. Grandparents laid them. And if they're laid improperly, and let me give an example of an improper foundation.
Okay. Is
my own story. I was sexually abused when I was 4 years old. Okay, that's a foundation in my life, because that's thoughts. That's what I think about women or girls. That's what I think about sex. That's what I think about somebody saying I love you during that whole stuff. That's what a babysitter does. I mean, so many things that go into that one action, and it's very foundational thoughts in my life. Because whenever abuse happens, there's always a lie associated with it.
That's true.
So the enemy always will insert a lie into the wound, right? Into the trauma, and it never heals until you don't believe that lie anymore. So foundationally, what that looks like is I grow up, and men grow up thinking of themselves in a certain way. So success becomes I can be successful even though I'm empty inside. And again, that's a weight. Success is a weight. It's a responsibility. And maybe that's the best way to say it. We add these responsibilities to our life, which, look, they're not bad. I'm not even suggesting that you don't do it. What I am suggesting is that be sure that emotionally, spiritually, physically, we understand this. If I need to get physically fit, I go to a trainer. If I need to get emotionally fit, where do I go? And most men won't talk about the things that harmed them or the traumas in their life because they don't want to be seen as weak. But the fact of the matter is you're going to be seen as weak at some point, because it's like a foundation in a house. If it's weak, you're going to see it in the wall somewhere. You're going to see it in the brick. You're going to see cracks somewhere, the more weight that's put on it. So the more weight, the more responsibility you put on your life, it's going to become evident to everybody that there's something wrong.
When did you notice so you going back to that sexual abuse, so when did it really surface? When you became a teenager or when you got married?
Yeah. probably that's haunted me my whole life because it just wasn't a one-time thing.
I got you.
It happened really twice by the time I was 15.
Okay.
So, and it wasn't just a one-time act. It wasn't a relationship, so to speak, but I guess you could say it was.
Did you think it was normal?
No, because I grew up in church, so
Right.
it just didn't set well,
Right.
but yet I enjoyed it.
Okay.
And that's we think we're a part of it because we enjoyed something,
Right.
even though it may have been abuse. But I didn't know it was abuse at the
Right.
time.
That's
I
my
mean,
point.
it didn't feel right, but I just didn't know. But it definitely, that thought process of sex and what I thought it was definitely haunted me through my teenage years on into my marriage. I don't think that a lot of guys out here, and again, each guy's different.
Right.
So I'm not going to lay my story on somebody else and say, well, if you don't deal with it this way, then you're not healed. I'm not going to do that because we all have our journeys.
Right.
What I would like is for everybody to be on that journey,
Right.
whatever that looks like. But, I took it into my marriage. I don't think I was ever faithful to any girlfriend that I ever had. Maybe once if I date them for a day,
Why do we do that as men? Because I remember you and I had a conversation before off camera, and for those who don't, and JT can tell a story about the adultery piece. But one thing that stood out in my mind, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. You said adultery is not even about the sex act.
No, it's not. No, it's the emptiness, and they're trying to fill it with something, and it's
that broken little boy inside.
Look, it's coping mechanisms.
Gotcha. It's a vice.
So some people go, they're stressed, the trauma that they've not dealt with, it's not healed. They've just covered it. Right. It's not healed. And we think if we don't talk about it, then it gets healed, and that's not the case either. It's kind of like a kid who puts a blindfold over their eyes and they think nobody can see them because they can't see. It's like, no, that's not how that works.
It's true.
Right. So,
how did you end up peeling back the layers to get to the root of that to really deal with it?
Well, man, to some degree, I still deal with it.
Okay.
And I think that's, again, my journey's my journey. But it's a coping mechanism. So for me, I have to be aware that that's a proclivity that I have that I did not choose.
Gotcha.
That was chosen for me. Now, what I do with it is my responsibility.
That's true.
And I didn't do very well with it. Like I would say the first 13 years of my marriage, I was unfaithful on multiple times to my wife. And
how did it affect your family?
Oh my gosh. It was, obviously it devastated my wife, of course. My kids, I think we did a fairly decent job of guiding them through the situation without them really knowing in depth what was going on.
Right.
Even though when it all came out, my wife and I separated for 9 months.
Okay.
And even that, man, I tell you what, you talking about becoming a good dad all of a sudden. It was crazy because I worked a lot, but there wasn't a morning I didn't get them up, and there wasn't a night I didn't put them in bed.
Wow.
And just because I didn't want to, I wanted to keep the security there.
Right.
Even though it was a very insecure time.
Right.
Between my wife and I.
How did you bridge back the forgiveness piece for her to come back?
Man, look, it's like any dude, right?
Right.
You have to work on yourself.
Yeah.
And it's like I used to say quite often, I don't do marriage counseling, I do manhood counseling.
Yeah.
Because if you get the man right,
the marriage will be right.
The marriage has the potential to be right.
Okay.
Now you may have hurt them enough, and they're talking about your wife,
right?
And they may go, I can't do this, and you shouldn't have put them in that spot for them to make that choice, but you did. Some wives can go, and my wife has. You know what? Let's work on this.
Okay.
We have a lot invested in children, and in our lives. At that time we were married, I think 14 years, something like that.
Did your wife ever feel like it was her fault?
Oh, heck no. You don't know my wife. Completely your fault. Yeah. No, my wife, no.
Because sometimes women do think is they?
Now, she did have a friend. It was interesting that she did ask my wife, and I would never, and please, dudes, don't ever ask your wife this question. But she did ask my wife what was her part in my downfall, which actually made me mad.
Right.
Actually, because I had taken full responsibility, full throttle, man. I was like, my wife didn't do anything to deserve this, and even the question offended me. However, it did help my wife go think through some things that she's never thought through before.
Oh.
And it brought some healing to her.
Okay.
That I don't think would have come any other way.
Yeah.
So, look, still to this day, I mean, I don't feel like this battle's ever over for me.
Do you exercise the fruit of the spirit of what that whole self-control piece? Or let me ask you, do you feel it arises when you overexert yourself in ministry or in business or?
Yeah. So anything that puts because look, dudes, we love to carry the stress, right? And not let anybody, we want to feel like our shoulders are broad. We can carry anything, man. Just give it to me.
Right.
And times in my life where I have taken on too much.
Right.
I'm too busy.
Right.
Maybe there's some family stressors that are unique for a season.
Right.
Like parents getting old, parents dying, going back to your hometown, reminds you, because I don't live where I grew up. So even going back to my hometown, I can drive by a neighborhood and go, oh yeah, that's where that happened. And that's where first time I had sex. And so it brings back these memories. And then that's a tall tale sign that, oh, wait a minute, maybe I need to deal with this.
Right.
Because I haven't thought about it, because I hadn't had to think about it.
Right.
So anytime that we have those kind of stressors that remind us of a trauma, if you don't deal with it properly, you'll go back to whatever soothing, whatever coping mechanism that you have, whether it's drinking. Hey, look, some guys it's working. Yeah. Man, they just, all right, I'm digging in, and at least I'll make money while I'm stressed out, So
right. As long as we provide it, we good.
Yeah, and again, that's one of those titles that I know that I can get caught up in. This is like, man, as long as I'm providing, I'm doing good. And so therefore now I deserve some stuff.
Right.
And man, once you get into that, I deserve some stuff, that's a dangerous place to be.
So JT, give us some key components for us brothers that might be going through that type of situation with our wives. Whether and what I mean by that, not necessarily sexually, but emotionally, we can commit adultery.
Sure.
So how do you coach somebody out of that process as a man?
Okay, great question. So for me, I go back again. You'll hear a theme in the way that I talk. Okay. Is I want to go to the foundations of them of a child.
Okay, gotcha.
Like, tell me about your relationship with your father, with your mother, with your grandparents, with a coach. Did anything happen? A good exercise would be for guys to sit down and go name the top 10 traumas that happened to you as a kid.
Wow.
Most guys can do 3 or 4 pretty easily.
Right.
But man, they really have to sit and meditate to get those last, 6 or 5, because it's just so deep in them, they haven't thought about it. The fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter how you grew up, we all have them, because there's no perfect set of parents and there's no perfect set of teachers. There's no perfect set of grandparents. So now I'm not saying it has to be something major,
right?
But again, any trauma, big T, little t, doesn't matter. There's a lie associated with it.
That's right.
So you got to deal with the lies.
Okay.
Like, for instance, you grow up, somebody says, you're never going to amount to nothing when you grow up. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a trauma. Right. That's a thought process. That's a thought trauma. Like, that's going to keep you from doing stuff if you believe that. So you have to deal with that lie. Well, that's a lie.
That's a lie.
It's just a flat out lie. And so I can't frame character on top of a foundation that's going to fall. And that's the framing part. So you got your foundational things, and that's emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally, intellectually, dealing with those things first. Okay, let's see how you're there. Okay, let's go to the framing section. That's character, integrity, lying. Are you truthful? Are you the fruits of the spirit? I mean, right. Are you beating your flesh into submission, like Paul said? Right? Are you doing these things?
The proper beating of the flesh, not improper.
Yeah, the proper. Good point. So, but because that, honestly, that is just as important as the foundation.
That's true. You're right.
And then the covering would be, who's your band of brothers, man?
Yeah, the whole accountability. I'm big
Yeah.
on it.
And who's covering you? Who's covering you when the storm comes? First, we know we got to have our relationship with Christ.
Right.
Right. There's three things in building that these are so fundamental, they're ridiculous. And if you do any of these wrong, you have potential of collapse.
Right.
Is plumb, level, square.
Talk about that.
So a plumb bob, if you know what a plumb bob is, brass. Usually, it's got a point.
Right.
It's got a string, and you can hold it up, and it's plumb. It means it's straight. Right. That's our relationship with God. So when my relationship with God is plumb, I can measure everything to that and see if it's out or not.
Gotcha.
So if you want to know what God says in your life, look at your life, and is it plumb with what He says in Scripture and what He says you experientially. Right.
Right.
Level would be horizontal. That's my relationships.
Right.
Horizontal relationships. Look, I don't have any unforgiveness. I don't have any ill will. I'm not offended. If I am offended, I'm going to go take care of that. I'm going to deal with that right now.
Right.
And then the square is I'm square with myself, meaning that what I say is square with who I am on the inside.
Wow.
So there's no difference.
There's no difference.
So if you look at life and with those three things in mind, you'll actually make a lot of great decisions just based on what I just said. But that's a component of covering that I can go to my guys and they tell me whether, man, you just don't seem, are you reading your Bible, man? Are you praying?
What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, something just ain't right. I mean, you're offended by this other guy. It doesn't seem what you're saying is really what you're doing, really. So that's not lining up. But if you're not close enough with guys, and it doesn't take, it's not an army of dudes,
Right.
by the way.
Right.
I mean, it's sad, 90% of guys don't say they don't even have a best friend.
That's true.
So like a 3 a.m. friend. I mean, if I'm out of town and my wife's at my house and my kid gets locked up, who am I going to call
Yeah.
to go take care of that?
Right.
Most men don't have that one guy that they can call.
Oh.
That's a sad state, right? Because we all need at least one guy that we can say, that's my band of brothers.
It makes a difference. That's why one of the reasons why I started this whole podcast, because I was having lunch with some brothers and they was dating these women, but they was demasculating them. They was to a point it was really messing with their psyche.
Mm-hmm.
Christian brothers dating these Christian women, made good money, loved God, but they were just, and then they would isolate themselves, and the enemy was just wreaking havoc in their mindset. And so we had lunch and we just started peeling the layers.
Mm-hmm.
What age were you when you decided I'm gonna peel the layers and really get to the root of this thing?
Oh my God. Well, I would say it started when I was about 36.
Okay.
36, 37 is when because I had seen the colossal damage that it had done,
Right.
For not just that with my wife, but as I look back at my life, it's like, man, this had some collateral damage, man.
Was there any shame?
Was there any what?
Shame or guilt? Did you ever live with the shame or guilt? Was there any? Because sometimes when we go through as men, sometimes we can't move forward because God forgive you for that. So let's do the work and let's release the shame, let's release the guilt, and let the healing, that masculinity, let it be healed.
Yeah, I was talking to shame when I came here. I think it's a conversation we have to have all the time.
Okay.
Because I think that shame is one of those devils that never leaves a man's head.
Woo.
And because you think about it, we have given it so much ammunition in our life,
right,
to remind us of what shame tells us who we are. There's a difference between guilt and shame. So guilt is I did something wrong.
Right.
So think of football, right?
Right.
You get a penalty, yellow flag is thrown, you take the consequence and you move on. Shame is you're at the 1 yard line and you try to score and you're stopped every single time. That's demoralizing. So guilt is I did something wrong. Shame is something's wrong with me. And that's the difference. And so we live with that constantly, is that something's got to be wrong with me. And Paul, I think, even dealt with shame too, by the way, because he would say, why do I do the things I don't want to do?
Right.
So he had that voice in his head as well, telling him, you're not this. Remember when you used to murder people? Remember you called yourself a Christian and you did all this stuff. And, I'm sure that voice in his head told him what the voice wanted him to be.
Yeah.
And that's what we got to combat, and we got to build against that. And that's why, there's a lot in the men's world, there's a lot of war themes and warriors and, which is great.
Right. We're not knocking it.
Yeah, I'm not against it.
Right.
But like I said earlier, Nehemiah, man, they had a sword in one hand and a trowel in the other.
Yeah.
So that means that part of overcoming these things like shame and guilt and these identity crises that we have is building properly, that when the storm's coming, you don't go out and fight a war.
Right.
You got to have a place of safety.
A place of safety.
And so when we build right, we become that place of safety for our family, for our friends. We become the steady eddies, as we used to say.
Right.
Like, when storms come, and grab onto him because he is unmovable. Right. And so that takes, like building a house, that takes great intention. It takes a great plan.
And being vulnerable too, to say, hey, I'm struggling. I need to lock in. I need to lock up.
Yeah.
I know when I first got married, my wife is sings. I don't know if you ever met Denotra, but she travels a lot. She sings gospel music. And when she would leave, when we first got married, I've been married 23 years now, 24. And when people used to laugh at me, but when she would travel to sing, I would stay at my grandparents' house, so I won't get no trouble.
See, look at you. You're a lot smarter than most.
Because I know what this flesh is capable of doing.
Yeah.
Even right today, I have to have accountability. That gave me such a sense of peace where I didn't have to really walk this thing out by myself.
Yeah.
Woo!
And accountability is one of those, used to be a buzzword more than, do you have an accountability?
Healthy accountability.
Yeah. Do you have an accountability partner? I always thought that's kind of weird because I was always like, well, I got a friend. I mean, all of a sudden it's like a title all of a sudden. But here's the difference, though. Accountability is giving someone permission to save me from myself.
Yeah.
So I can't
say that one more time.
Accountability is giving someone permission to save me from myself. So you can't come to me and go, you're going to be accountable to me. Like, you can't I got to give that to you. I got to, hey, Charles, man, I'm struggling in this area. Can you just kind of call me once a week, see how I'm doing, or let's meet for coffee. That's given. And that's where it got kind of weird back in, a couple of years ago, where all this accountability was going around and everybody was just like, oh, well, you're going to be accountable to me, like this forced thing.
Right. And we're really taking it serious.
Yeah. And which is good, but unhealthy. I like how you said that. Healthy accountability is really just a good friendship.
Yeah.
It's one brother saying, I care enough about you that I want to help you, and you care enough about me that you want to help me, and we're going to keep each other straight. Now, the other thing that started happening, by the way, in this whole, accountability movement was kind of this, people would come and tell you what they did.
Right.
Now, Scripture calls that confession.
Right.
That ain't accountability. Accountability says, I'm going to come tell you before it happens, so I'm saved from it.
That's good. That's good.
That's the difference. And that's why I say, I just need a good friend, man. I got Stephen Mansfield. I work with Stephen, and we talk, at least text every week. And he'll ask me, man, how you doing?
I don't know what that is.
That's not me.
I know what it is. We had a problem at church like this.
So I worked with this guy, Stephen Mansfield.
Right.
And he calls me, or we text or call every week, and it's a preemptive call.
Okay.
And back to what I said about, accountability, giving someone permission. Well, I've given him permission to keep me accountable. So I'm not waiting to go confess something to him. It's preemptive. He's going, okay, how you doing in these areas? How you doing in this? Because I've told him my proclivities.
Okay.
This is what I deal with. This is what, when I'm under stress, this is how I want to cope with it.
Okay.
And again, it doesn't have to be an unhealthy thing, but anything done a lot is not healthy, no matter what it is. You can work out and not be healthy. I know guys that work out too much.
Right.
It takes up too much of their time. It takes up, they're trying to get these little muscles which is fine if you're going to get paid for it. But if you're not, it's kind of weird.
Right.
So, but that is him preemptively saying, I know you so well that I need to ask you these questions. For him, we do have little code words, like he travels the world all the time.
Right.
And so I'll just text him, how's the Oreos? Now, behind that one statement is, are you working out today?
Okay.
Are you overeating? Are you drinking too much wine with your meal? You know, there's a lot of questions with just that. How's the Oreos?
How long did it take you to build that relationship?
Probably years. I mean, I've known Steven I've known of him for a long time because he's a New York Times best-selling author. So I read a few of his books and kind of knew who he was.
Right.
We probably met in 2013, 12 or 13, no, about 14 or 15. And just at a men's conference and I just connected. I mean, it's just one of those things. I don't know why.
Wow.
And we just built on that, and now we started Great Man Global, which is the 501(c) that we work under, and within that is the Great Man Podcast.
Right. Tell us about that.
The Great Man Podcast, man, that's fun because Anthony and I, my co-host.
I know Anthony.
Anthony, you talking about that's a tripping dude. Anyway,
right.
We had a podcast called Renovating Masculinity for quite a while. And then Steven had the Great Man Podcast, and he just came to us and said, this is just silly that we don't combine and do it together. So we agreed to do that. And our format is that Steven his podcast is called, what's Great Man, it's called The Talk. And typically he'll talk about a subject from a 30,000 foot view.
Gotcha.
So he's very high level. You know, he's in the academia world. So he brings the history to his guy's PhD in history. So he kind of brings an overview of a subject. And then the next week, Anthony and I dissect that subject and teach men how to build it into their lives.
Oh, wow.
So take this big thought, put it down. So the great thing about it is you stay on a subject for 2 weeks.
Right.
And so, I listen to multiple podcasts, and sometimes I can't keep up with the ones that are like 3 hours long. There's a different subject every week. I'm like, man, I'm just on hour one of the last week. So I like our format. We do talk about subjects that most men don't even think about to talk about. Right. It's just Steven in his travels, he's very observant about things. So
one of the questions I ask all men is, what you really want your legacy to be?
The older I get, it just sounds so cliche, but we always say, what if you had one line to put on your tombstone, what would you want it to be? Right. And then start living toward that. And honestly, I just want to be a great grandfather.
Okay.
I want to be a great dad. I want to be a faithful husband.
That's it.
And at the end of the day, everything else, money, material things, success, all the trappings, whatever you want to call, the trappings in life, man, they really don't mean much to me. The older I get. Now they used to a lot because that's how you kind of get your value. But now my value is, I want to impact men's lives. I want to use my story to help a guy not do what I did. That's why I say all the time, I don't know what to tell you what to do, but I can tell you what not to do. And that's because of just the darkness that I've had to walk through. So, but at the end of the day, man, I want to go home and play with my grandkid,
That's what's up. What's up. Where can we find you, JT?
All socials. Of course, you have to be on social media these days.
Right.
But Instagram, Facebook. We do have a private Facebook group. It's Great Man.
Okay, right.
I think it's Facebook/Great Man Global. We have that on Instagram, on TikTok, on all of them, really.
Okay. Well, man, thank you for your time, man. I know you got to go to your next meeting, man. I appreciate you, man. You're definitely a blessing, not to just to us, but to the community, man.
Well, I appreciate you, man.
All right, brother.
To see future My Manhood Matters episodes, do me a favor, click like, share, and subscribe. Tune in for more My Manhood Matters episodes.